D&D number 4, Weeds Grow, in Jesus' Name, Chapter 15. Halfway home, Bree began to limp. "Are you hurting?" Ricky asked. "My back is sore." She turned to look at the rocky cliff. "I fell from the top." Ricky eyed the area. "You fell from the top to where I found you?" "Well, it was more like he pulled me down. I landed on my back. I think it's starting to stiffen up." "Lord, Bree, that's at least 15 feet. Maybe we should take you into the hospital and let them check you out." "Please, I just want to go home. I hate going to the doctor." "And again, more like your mother," Eric said. As they neared the house, Bree remembered poor Jeff. The beach was empty now. "What did you do to Jeff, by the way?" Ricky asked. Bree grimaced. "I put GHP in his lemonade." She looked up at the silent, stony-faced men, realizing that meant that they were pretty upset with her, and she tried to explain herself. "At the time, it seemed so harmless, almost like a joke." "Where did you get it, Bree?" Eric asked, his voice deceptively soft. "An acquaintance of an acquaintance. Just like the gun." "The gun is yours?" Eric asked. She looked down. "Yes." Ricky shook his head, while Eric immediately called Agent Dixon with that piece of information. "When did you meet with your acquaintance?" Ricky asked. 2 days ago. Remember when I said I was running to the store?" "I remember it clearly. So, poor Jeff accompanied you, keeping you safe while you picked up the means for his demise." Bree screwed her mouth into a delightful pout, Ricky thought, even though his frown showed no evidence of his observation. "Well, when you put it that way, it seems like a pretty cruel thing for me to do, huh? I swear I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just wanted to help. I feel so useless." Neither man offered her any words of forgiveness or consolation. They walked in silence the rest of the way. And when they arrived at the house, Shelley ran to her daughter, shooing the men away. She took her upstairs and stayed with her while Bree showered and slipped into a nightgown and her robe. They sat together on the bed while Bree told her mother everything. Shelley's anger at her daughter putting herself in danger lasted all of 30 seconds. They cried together over the helpless feelings of a sexual assault. Bree finally understood a little of what her mother had been through, something Shelley would never have wanted her to understand so well. Only her mom's body had been completely violated. Thank God Ricky arrived when he had. Bree and Shelley laughed together over the cockamamie plan Bree had executed, and Shelley marveled at the courage it had taken to go through with it. Their mother-daughter time came to an end when Ricky knocked on the door, and Shelley let him in. "I'll let you two talk," Shelley said. She leaned close to Ricky. "Don't be too hard on her." Ricky frowned. "I'll try, but I'm not promising anything." Shelley left, and Ricky came to sit on the bed next to Bree. "You feeling better?" "Yes. Thank you, Ricky, for coming when you did. I don't know what would have happened." "Yes, you do." She nodded. "You found the anger." "Yes, I did." She swallowed. "Well, before you start in on me, may I ask how Jeff is doing?" Ricky's expression softened. She was worried about someone else. He had to admit she was usually worried about someone else. She took little thought for herself. That was evident. She just wanted to help. However, her helping could have turned out to be a tragedy of the worst kind. "Jeff is dizzy. He's nauseated, and when he's completely awake, he will be receiving quite a bit of ribbing from his fellow agents. Do you realize he could press charges if he wanted?" She hung her head. "Does he want to?" "No." "No. Jason is pissed at both of you and is unclear if he's going to allow Jeff to continue with him." "Ricky, you can't let Jason fire him. He's a good guy. A delightful, intelligent young man who wants to be a force for good in this world." "I can't let Jason fire him?" "I'd say it would be your job to keep that from happening." "Maybe you can talk to Jason on his behalf." "I will." Ricky's eyes moved over her. "Besides what I see on your face, what other injuries do you have?" She shrugged. "I'm not sure, but I think my back is messed up because the shower really stung. You want me to take a look? She pulled off her gown, and he blew out a breath. Looks like claw marks here, he said, lightly touching the side of her chest. He looked down. Scrapes on both shins and on your right knee. Claw marks on your right hip and more claw marks on your left thigh. Turn around. When she obliged, he cursed. Your back is covered with scratches, a large one on your right shoulder blade. He lifted her arms and examined her hands, and pointing out various scratches and bruises, he handed her gown back to her, shook his head. Anything I can think of to say to you, I'm sure you've already said to yourself. Probably. When I realized you were gone, Bree, my vision literally blurred. My world collapsed around me. I know what you mean. He looked into her eyes. Yeah, I suppose you do. And I'm thankful I didn't have to suffer through several days like you did. It was pure hell those days you were missing. And yet, knowing that, you still chose to put me and the family through the same thing that you'd suffered while I was gone. What if, Bree, this Hector dude had taken you back to Tommy? How many times do you think he would have raped you or hurt you or tortured you before he killed you? Maybe I should have gone into more detail in the telling of my experiences with Tommy. Maybe I should have let you know how he would enjoy the pain he could inflict on you. He would teach you things you've never thought a man could do to a woman. He would... What am I doing? If you weren't so banged up, I'd put you over my knee. Why do guys always say that? Bree asked, effectively changing his focus. Sighing, he offered a quick smile in appreciation of her tactic. For the visual sensation it provides. He nodded his head. Yeah, definitely the visual. They sat quietly for a time, their hands clasped, and Bree was the one who finally spoke. Ricky, can you forgive me? I already do. Then again, I haven't heard the whole story. I haven't asked for it because Agent Dixon and Jason will be here soon, and there's going to be a debriefing. Great. Sorry, but there's no way around it. Would you like to rest until they get here? Yes, I feel so drained. Well, you used all your energy trying to survive. He rose and covered her. Sleep, baby. I'll come get you later when they get here. Well, what time is it? It's almost 4. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. Bending low, he kissed her. His eyes moistened. Don't you ever leave me. He rose quickly and left the room. New scene. She woke at the knock on her door. Come in, she said softly. Joey and Mark came through her door. Dang it, Bree, Joey said. We get home and it's like Grand Central Station. The place is crawling with agents and police cars. You gave us a freaking heart attack. We had to fight through the media to get in the gate. I swear, what were you doing? Are you okay? She smiled. I love you too, Joey. Mark stepped forward. They told us something about some half-cocked scheme you came up with, which I can't wait to hear. They sent us to tell you to come down. We're having a big meeting. Okay, tell them I'm on my way. She rose stiffly and found she could barely move. Let me help you, her brothers said in unison. They helped her get to her feet. I was going to throw on some clothes, but I'm just too sore. Dang, look at your face, Mark said. Is it bad? Well, your lip is all swollen and there's a huge, ugly bruise on your cheek. Will you hand me my robe? Joey grabbed the robe and held it for her. Well, I guess I'd better go down and face the music. Yeah, I can't wait to hear this, Joey said. Bree made her way down the stairs and was surprised by the number of people gathered to hear her story. Agent Dixon, his partner, and 2 other FBI agents were standing in the great room near the front window. All 11 of Jason's agents who'd been assigned to the Keno family occupied one sofa, including both arms and the standing space behind that sofa. Jeff Davis sat in the center as if they had closed ranks around their friend. Shelley, Jeffy, Eric, Justin, and Jason occupied the second sofa. Mark and Joey headed toward the third, where Ricky sat. Ricky stood and escorted Bree over to sit with him. So, Miss Adams, Agent Dixon began, I believe you have a story to tell. Mr. Keno requested that you tell it here for all, and I've allowed that. Bree glanced around at Eric, and he winked at her. She knew he'd actually done her a favor, so she wouldn't have to keep telling it over and over again. She noticed her frisbee lying on the table in the center of the room, along with the suspect bottle of lemonade and her gun. She drew a deep breath. Okay, but may I begin with an apology? To everyone. I was only trying to help. I didn't mean to cause so much trouble. There was silence in the room, and she guessed that meant that the jury was out. She took a deep breath and began with her idea to contact one of Tommy's men and get him to change his loyalties. She mentioned that she thought about offering herself as bait for the FBI and thought they'd probably turn her down. She spoke of how she obtained the gun and the drug, keeping her eyes averted from Jeff. She spoke of how noble and valiant Jeff was, and how he tried to call for backup when he realized he wasn't well, and how she stopped him. She spoke of her fear when she realized she was really going through with the plan. She'd almost chickened out and had to force herself to climb the rocks anyway. She told them how the meeting went from bad to worse. Smiling, she described Hector's face when she'd pulled the gun and placed it against his forehead, and her elated feeling when she thought she was about to waltz back to the house with her prisoner at gunpoint. Glancing around the room, she could see smiles of appreciation from Jason's men, but not from the feds. She worked her way haltingly through the rest, her fall from the rocks, the attempted rape, and finally Ricky showing up. And when she finished, the room was as silent as when she'd begun. Wringing her hands, she looked from face to face, ready to take her punishment. Ricky reached over and placed his hand on top of hers to still them. She looked up at him. I love you, he said softly. She smiled. We've questioned Hector Ramirez. He gave up Tommy's location. As before, though, Tommy had already left the premises. So, according to Beth, he had 3 men with him, and one he only spoke with on the phone. We figured the guy was the actor, Bennett. We figured the phone guy was the actor, Bennett. We've taken out Red and Ramirez. He's down to 1 man, unless he's bringing more in as we get rid of them, and I doubt that. He's got to be getting pretty frustrated, Jason said. And frustrated men do desperate things, Agent Dixon added. Be careful. We will be, Jason said. That's all we have for now, Agent Dixon said, gathering the objects on the table. He held up the gun, a question on his face. I'll get that back to the rightful owner, Eric promised, along with some stern words about loaning out a firearm. The agent nodded and laid it back on the table. Eric rose and saw them out, shaking hands and offering thanks. The rest of you can stay right where you are, Jason announced. Jeffy came over to see Bree, and Ricky pulled her onto his lap. I'm glad you're okay, Bree, Jeffy said. I cried when I heard you were gone. I thought it was going to be just like when Ricky was gone. I hate Tommy. I want him to leave us alone. Me too, baby. He's a bad man. This will all be over soon, sweetie. I know, she said with a smile. She kissed Bree's cheek and moved on. Next, she crawled up onto Jeff Davis's lap. I know my sister gave you drugs that made you go to sleep, and that wasn't very nice, and she's really sorry. I hope you still like her. She probably didn't know that I like you because we have almost the same name. I know my name isn't really Jeffy. It's Juneflower. I know that's a weird name. That's what Kimmy says, but I like it. Do you like it? You bet I do, he said with a smile. Anyway, I went off on a tangent. I do that a lot. Daddy says it's because I have too much information floating around in my brain, and I like learning, so I'm adding new information every day. Today, before Bree went to make a deal with the bad guys, I was learning a new Mozart piece. I've already learned some Beethoven, and I'm going to take real piano lessons at the School of Music instead of just with a piano teacher, because a piano teacher says she can't teach me, and that's okay, though. I want to go to school. I love to learn, and this new music school teaches all the regular stuff, too, until I can get started at my new school. Mommy's taking me to the museum soon so that I can see all the old stuff. I know I really shouldn't call the collections at the museum old stuff, since it's really a conglomerate of amazing collections of our past, but saying old stuff is simpler. I'm excited about going. We got a brochure in the mail for a kids' day. We received a brochure, Eric corrected as he re-entered the room. And Jeffy, Eric said softly. That's enough. Jeffy smiled broadly at her father. Okay, Daddy. She turned back to Jeff. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you not to be too mad at my sister, and I hope you feel better. And she leaned close to his ear and said something else. Then she kissed his cheek and scooted down and went back to her mom. Shelley rose. I'm going to feed Jeffy and put her to bed. Mark, Joey, come on, you need to eat and get your homework done. You men go easy on Bree, or you'll have me to answer to. She left the room with her 3 youngest children in tow. Hey, Jeff, one of the agents said. What did she say to you there at the end? Jeff's face turned red. None of your business. Come on, man, you can tell us. He rolled his eyes. She thinks I'm cute. Uproarious laughter filled the air. Hands ruffled Jeff's hair and patted his back. He went over the wrong one of them said. Ricky's eyebrows rose and Bree looked at him and smiled. So, let's talk about your behavior, Agent Davis, Jason interrupted. He turned to Bree. And yours too, young lady. Yes, sir, Jeff stated. First, let me ask this. Do you realize how important the assignment given to you is? Yes, sir. Life and death important, sir. I assure you I take my assignment very seriously. Then you want to tell me why you were sitting in a chair out on the beach? Jeff swallowed hard and glanced at Bree. I asked, Bree started. Jason held up a hand. I wasn't asking you, Bree. He nodded at Jeff. Agent Davis, go ahead. And don't think about giving me half-truths to protect her or yourself. No, sir, I would never lie to you. Then proceed. She asked me to sit near enough to talk to her. In an effort to please her, I did as she asked, though I swear I never let my guard down. In an effort to please her? Your assignment is not to please her. It's to protect her. Jeff nodded, his face solemn. Yes, sir. Jason turned to Bree. Thank you for helping me to understand that I've neglected to address a subject in training. I should have directed Agent Davis to protect you even from yourself if need be. Bree rolled her eyes at Jason and leaned forward. Jeff, can you forgive me? The way I tricked you, what I did to you, it was cruel of me. And I don't blame you if you want to press charges. He sighed. I can forgive you. Who couldn't? The rest of the room acknowledged the truth of that statement. If I pressed charges, it would seem pretty wimpy of me, wouldn't it? Well, still, I wouldn't blame you. No, of course, I won't press charges. I'll be lucky if Mr. Lee even lets me stick around. That's correct, Jason said. Jason, Bree interrupted, I'd like to make a statement on Jeff's behalf. By all means, he said. I've never been so impressed by any bodyguard I've ever used. He's so very honest and competent. Well, that remains to be seen, Jason interjected. Bree frowned. He takes his job very seriously. He never lets his guard down for a second. He couldn't very well have foreseen that the person he was keeping safe would betray him, and that's exactly what I did. For a good cause, I thought. Nevertheless, he couldn't have known. The moment he realized something was wrong, he tried to call in, Jason. If it had been you sitting out there with me and I offered you a bottle of lemonade, you would have taken it without a second thought, and it would have been you who was humiliated, and there would have been nothing you could have done about it. The room was silent. Well, there's really nothing I can say to that, is there? Except you're correct. If you'd offered me a drink, I would have taken it. Davis, I guess that got you off the hook. Thank you, sir, he said, trying not to break into a smile. One of his buddies slapped him on the back. Bree leaned back, finally relaxed. Ricky put his arm around her. You, young lady, on the other hand, have a lot to answer for. I should turn you over my knee, Jason said. Bree laughed and Ricky smiled. I'm glad you think this is so funny, Jason continued. Let me just paint you a picture. Ricky is 15 minutes later getting home. He tracks you to the rocks, but he hears nothing. He climbs the rocks, and there is your naked, lifeless body lying there. He can't move you because the FBI will need to cover the crime scene, so he has to leave you there while the place is taken over by the crime scene unit. Eric finally makes it to the scene and somehow gets Ricky to come back home where your mother and brothers and sister are waiting to see you again. Instead, they're told the terrible news. I could go on, but I think you see where this is going. Bree nodded, her eyes glistening with tears. Of course. You're right. Well, Jason, I think you've made your point, Justin said. I don't know if you truly got through to her, but you sure as heck got through to me, and I won't sleep for a week. Jason laughed. Sorry. He sighed, looking from face to face of people he truly loved and cared for. I guess this meeting is adjourned. Everyone left the room, each making their own comments to Bree as they did. Once alone, Ricky took her hand. Are you hungry? No. You haven't eaten all day. I'm just tired. Well, let's get you up to bed. Up in her bedroom, he tucked her in. She reached for his hand. Aren't you staying? It's only 7. I'll be back later. I have some business to discuss with Jason and Dad. Is it a secret? No. Well, then tell me. He sighed. I don't think it's something you want to hear. Just tell me. After Steve and I spoke today, he had a meeting with a source on the street who was able to obtain Tommy's whereabouts. It was the same address they got from Hector today. Bree thought, so if I hadn't interfered today, you would have been able to surprise Tommy and get him. Tommy must have known about my meeting with Hector, and he turned tail and ran as soon as he knew things went south. Ricky's hand brushed over Bree's hair. You couldn't have known how things would turn out. Don't worry. We'll get him. Sleep. It was an easy order to follow. New scene. He knew when she left the room. She'd tossed and turned on and off since he'd come to her bed to stay with her, to comfort her. He'd held her, whispered soothing words, and finally fallen asleep. He woke when she rose and went to look out the balcony door to the ocean. She didn't go outside. Instead, she turned and left the room. Thinking she needed some space to work things out, he'd stayed in bed. But it had now been over an hour, and he arose and went to find her. It didn't take long. She sat in the dark, in a chair, in the kitchen. She was bent over double. He heard her moan, and quickly he knelt in front of her, making out her features in the moonlight. She'd been crying. Bree, what's wrong? I'm not sure, she said, sniffing loudly. Are we talking physical or mental? Both. Something's wrong. I'm cramping. Bad cramping. He felt at a loss if this was a woman kind of thing. Let me go get your mom, okay? Yes, okay, she said breathlessly. The fact that she didn't argue told him just how uncomfortable she was. Okay, hon, I'll be right back. Here, I'll get you a cool cloth. Turning on the light, he opened the door and pulled out a clean towel, ran it under the cold tap water, and turned toward her. What he saw made his heart stop. Oh, Bree, you're bleeding. She blinked at him slowly as if she didn't comprehend. There was blood on the floor around the chair. So much blood. It dripped off the edge of the chair from underneath her. He was afraid to leave her to get Shelley. He hadn't brought his phone down with him. He had no choice but to yell. He did that as he grabbed the kitchen phone and dialed 911. The family converged almost instantly. By the time he finished talking to the operator, Eric and Shelley were already laying Bree down on the floor. Mom, Bree said softly, what's happening? It's going to be okay, baby girl. What's wrong with her? Mark asked. I'm not sure, Shelley answered. Eric looked up. She's hemorrhaging. Boys, will you take Jeffy out of here? They obeyed immediately. Ricky knelt beside her. Hemorrhaging? Shelley looked at him and then at Bree. Sweetheart, when was your last period? I don't know, Bree said, her words slurring. A month, I guess. Not sure. Ricky's face paled. She's pregnant? Well, if she was, she's probably not anymore, Shelley said. Ricky, Bree said, panic in her voice. I'm here. I'm right here. I don't think I can. She went slack. Bree? Come on, baby, hang with me. But she didn't answer. Eric rose, called security to tell them to expect the ambulance. He turned and pulled Ricky to his feet and told him to go get some clothes on. He opened the front door, then turned to Mark. Get dressed. I need you to take Ricky to the hospital. Joey, you take care of Jeffy. Call Jason and tell him what's happening. Don't let Jeffy out of your sight. Got it? Yes, sir. Completely. New scene. Eric looked around the surgical waiting room. Ricky was in full lotus in the corner of the room, his eyes closed. That spoke volumes about what he was feeling. Just when others would expect Ricky to be volatile was when he was the calmest. A full lotus in a public place meant he was definitely in another world. His jeans had blood smears across the thighs. His hair was disheveled, yet the look on his face was one of peace. Mark stared out the window, his hands in his pockets. He never moved. Shelley also had blood stains on her clothing. Her hair was still in the braids she'd worn to bed. She rocked back and forth, tears intermittently making their way down her cheeks. Ricky opened his eyes and stood, and Eric turned toward the door. The doctor walked in a few seconds later. She's going to be fine, the doctor began. There was a collective sigh of relief. She's in recovery. You should be able to see her in about an hour, and one of the nurses will come to get you. And so, what happened? Shelley said impatiently. Eric smiled. His wife still hated doctors. She lost the baby. I'm sorry. I thought you knew what was happening. I was told by the emergency crew that she'd suffered a substantial fall yesterday. I'm sure that was the cause. How far along was she? Ricky asked quietly. No more than 3 or 4 weeks. There's no damage to the uterus or her ovaries. She'll be able to conceive again. So I take it you didn't know she was pregnant? No. Well, I don't need to tell you that the media is going to have a heyday with this one. Well, they could have a heyday with a runny nose. All it takes is the right snot. Yes, well, I'll be back to check on her soon. Eric offered his hand. Thank you. You're welcome. Eric, Shelley, and Mark all turned to Ricky. Are you okay? He nodded. Bree's okay. That's all that matters. Eric touched his son's shoulder. Talk to me, Rick. He shrugged. Well, what is there to say? I'm mourning the death of a child I didn't know I had. I wonder if they could tell if it was a boy or girl. Yes, Eric answered. Not visually, but by blood samples. I'll get the information for you. Thank you. He looked around him, his eyes moistening. You know, I have plans to ask Bree to marry me, and we've already talked about the fact that I want children. It scared her a little. What I'm saying is, I knew that I wanted children. I just didn't realize how much. And now that I find I actually created life, if only for those brief few weeks, it feels like such a miracle. Then boom, on top of that, such a loss. Shelley moved forward, stood on her toes, and hugged him. He hugged her back. They held on to each other for a long time. They were separated by the flash of cameras and barrage of questions being thrown at them. It took several minutes before hospital security moved in to do their job. New scene. Ricky stood against the wall, one foot crossed over the other, his arms folded across his chest, watching Bree's face from across the room. He'd been standing there for hours, waiting for her to awaken. How could he feel so much for her? He never thought loving someone could make you feel so many conflicting emotions. God, how he loved her, and how he wanted her. Envisioning their future lives had become a pastime of his. He would imagine himself standing on his own deck, looking out over the water. Then he would shift his eyes to watch beautiful Bree playing with the little girl and little boy in the sand. She would smile up at him and beckon him to join them. He could see it so very clearly. He would strive to be a patient father like his own, and to be wise, and to be everything a perfect husband and father should be, and he would protect them. He would protect them. Bree stirred, and he went to her immediately and took her hand. She opened her beautiful gray eyes and blinked slowly. Hello, he said softly. Hey. He smiled. Did you know you still have a southern accent? I do not, she said groggily. It's the hay. It gets to me every time. He watched her face. Are you in any pain? No, I'm just sleepy. What happened? You don't remember anything? I remember Mom and Eric getting me down on the floor. That's the last thing. He sighed. Bree, apparently, you were pregnant, and the fall you took yesterday caused the placenta to tear away from the uterus, and you hemorrhaged pretty bad. I'm pregnant? A strong hand brushed hair from her face. You were, Bree. You lost the baby. Her eyes blinked in slow motion. After several moments, she turned her head away, and she didn't speak again. Ricky waited. He didn't want to push her. It must be a hard thing for a woman to lose a child, even one you didn't know you had. After 5 minutes, though, Ricky began to worry. Bree? She didn't answer. Bree, sweetie, will you talk to me? When she still didn't answer, he stuffed his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. He stepped back. Okay. Well, I guess I'll let you get some rest. I'm sorry, she whispered. He came closer. What did you say? I'm sorry, Ricky. I'm so sorry. For what? I killed your child. Oh, no, honey. You didn't kill our child. Hector Ramirez did that when he threw you off a cliff. It wasn't your fault, wasn't it? If I hadn't gone through with that stupid idea, your baby would be alive right now. Our baby, Bree. Ours. And you were just trying to help. I know that. Everyone knows that. It was a silly idea, but you know what? It almost worked. You couldn't have known how things would turn out. It's not your fault. I didn't know, Ricky. If I had known, I swear to you, I wouldn't have put your baby's life in danger. I know that. And it's our baby, not mine. Ours, Bree. Sometimes things happen that are beyond our control. You can't blame yourself. I certainly don't. I'm simply grateful that you're okay. It wasn't our time to have a baby. Not yet. He leaned close and kissed her forehead. Oh, Bree, I love you so very much. I love you too, Ricky, so very much. Bree, I was wondering about something. I mean, I didn't use protection when we made love. It's not an excuse, and I accept full responsibility, but as long as I've known you, you've used the pill. I know I shouldn't have assumed, but, well, when did you stop using your birth control pills? I accidentally left them behind in the hotel in Florida. I meant to replace them. I never got around to it. It's been a little hectic since I've been home, to say the least. She yawned. It's been so unreal. It's like in a little over a month, our whole family's been torn apart, broken down, and defeated. Okay, well, I'm going to have to stop you there. We've had some trouble. Tommy planted Beth to accomplish all the things you've just been talking about, but it didn't work. We overcame everything. Our family is still close, and we're all still alive, and we all still love and respect each other. There are no rifts in our family unit, none. We've not been torn apart nor broken down. We've weathered the storm, and we've done a darn good job of it. And never, never will we be defeated. That word is not in my vocabulary. And that's one of the reasons I love you so much, Bree said, her eyes drifting shut. Ricky brushed a soft kiss over her lips. You're tired, hon. Get some sleep. I'll be right here. Her eyes opened again. Where's Mom? Dad forced her to go get some breakfast. They'll be back soon. I'm glad your dad takes such good care of her. Yeah, me too. I love your mom. And I love your dad. See, there's nothing broken about our family. How's our patient this morning? Ricky smiled at the doctor as he entered the room. She's tired. She lost a lot of blood, but her energy will return soon. He pulled the sheet down and pressed on her abdomen, and Bree winced. You may still have some cramping, but I think you're good to go. How would you like to go home? I'd love it. I think it will be for the best, though you have to promise to take it easy. Nothing strenuous, and he looked markedly at Ricky. And no sex for 6 weeks. 6 weeks, Bree exclaimed. That's correct. So I'll sign your release papers. He nodded at Ricky. Take care of her. Thank you, doctor, Ricky said, offering his hand. I intend to. And that is the end of chapter 15.